Late afternoon, northern South America. In a world warmer than any modern jungle, the wetlands stretch outward in endless, flooded silence. The season is neither dry nor wet, but something in between, a constant saturation where land and water have not yet decided their boundaries. The sky hangs low, pale and heavy, diffusing the light into a muted glow that never fully sharpens into clarity. The air is dense enough to feel. Each breath carries heat, decay, and the quiet persistence of life breaking down and beginning again. Broad ferns arch over dark channels of water. Massive trunks rise from submerged roots, their bark slick with humidity. Nothing moves quickly here. Even the insects hum in slow, layered tones, as if time itself has thickened. At the edge of this drowned forest, a small group of early humans advances. Their bodies are lean, their movements deliberate. They do not belong fully to this place. Their strength lies in open ground, in distance, in cooperation. Here, every step is uncertain. The mud yields beneath their feet. The water conceals what the eye cannot read. One individual pauses. The surface ahead is still, too still. No insects touch it. No small ripples break its skin. The silence is not empty. It is occupied. Beneath the opaque water, unseen and motionless, a presence coils within the darkness. Muscles layered upon muscles, patient, efficient, waiting not with intention, but with instinct shaped over millions of years. There is no warning, only proximity. And in this place, proximity is everything. The wetlands of Paleocene South America exist in a state of prolonged heat and saturation, shaped by a global climate far warmer than that of the present day. Atmospheric carbon levels remain elevated, and polar ice is absent. As a result, dense, humid forests extend across much of the continent, merging with vast swamp systems where rivers overflow and drainage is slow. These environments favor organisms that can tolerate heat, low oxygen levels, and constant exposure to waterlogged terrain. It is within this ecological framework that one of the largest serpents ever known emerges as a dominant presence. Titanoboa is not merely a larger version of modern constrictors. Its scale reflects the environmental conditions that support it. Estimated to reach lengths exceeding 12 meters and weights approaching or surpassing 1 metric ton. Its body mass is sustained by the consistently high temperatures of its habitat. Like all reptiles, its metabolism depends on external heat. In cooler climates, such size would be unsustainable. Here, it becomes viable and advantageous. Its anatomy follows the principles seen in modern boas and anacondas, but amplified. The skull is elongated, with flexible ligaments that allow it to engulf large prey. The musculature is dense and layered, capable of generating immense constrictive force. Contrary to earlier assumptions, constriction does not primarily crush bones, but instead disrupts blood circulation, rapidly inducing cardiac arrest. In an environment where prey often moves through confined, muddy channels, such efficiency reduces struggle and risk of injury. Fossil evidence, recovered primarily from a Saragen formation in what is now northern South America, indicates that Titanoboa occupied a niche similar to that of modern apex aquatic predators. Stable isotope analysis suggests a diet heavily reliant on large fish, though its size would have allowed it to exploit a wide range of vertebrates, amphibians, reptiles, and any terrestrial animals that ventured too close to the water's edge. Its hunting strategy relied on ambush. Submerged and nearly invisible, it conserved energy until a precise moment when distance could be closed without pursuit. Within this ecosystem, visibility is limited. Water is dark, filled with organic matter. Vegetation obstructs lines of sight. Sound is dampened by humidity and dense growth. These conditions favor predators that do not rely on speed over distance but on stillness and proximity. Titanoboa embodies this strategy completely. It does not chase. It waits. In contrast, early human populations, though not historically overlapping with the species in reality, are imagined here within the same environmental constraints, defined by their own evolutionary adaptations. Homo sapiens is a product of open landscapes, of savannas where visibility extends across distance, and threats can be detected before they are immediate. Their defining advantages lie not in raw physical strength, but in cognition, cooperation, and the use of tools. Bipedal locomotion frees the hands. Endurance allows for sustained movement. Social structures enable shared awareness and coordinated response. Yet, these traits are context-dependent. In dense wetlands, visibility collapses, movement slows, sound travels unpredictably. The advantages of distance and anticipation diminish. A human group entering such terrain must adapt quickly, relying on heightened caution and collective vigilance. Their tools, simple spears shaped stone, extend reach but do not eliminate vulnerability, especially against a predator that operates within arm's length before detection. From a biological perspective, the contrast between these two organisms reflects differing evolutionary solutions to survival. Titanoboa represents specialization within a stable, resource-rich aquatic environment, where ambush predation is optimized. Homo sapiens represents flexibility, capable of adapting to multiple environments but dependent on awareness and preparation. In this imagined convergence, the balance of power is not fixed. It shifts with terrain, with awareness, with a margin between detection and contact. And in the wetlands, that margin is often measured in seconds. The wetlands themselves are not passive backdrops, but active forces shaping every interaction within them. Oxygen levels in the water remain low, particularly in slow-moving channels where decomposition consumes what little is available. This limits the diversity of aquatic life to species capable of tolerating such conditions, often resulting in ecosystems dominated by fewer but highly specialized organisms. Large fish, lungfish, and primitive crocodilian relatives occupy these waters, forming a layered food web where size and efficiency determine survival. Within this system, Titanoboa exists at the uppermost tier. Unlike pursuit predators that depend on bursts of speed, it operates within narrow margins of energy expenditure. Its physiology is adapted for long periods of inactivity, conserving resources until the precise moment of engagement. Studies of modern constrictors show that successful ambush predators can spend the majority of their time motionless, relying on camouflage and environmental blending rather than active search. In such a dense, obscured habitat, stillness becomes a form of invisibility. Thermoregulation is central to its dominance. The consistently high ambient temperatures of the Paleocene wetlands allow Titanoboa to maintain metabolic efficiency without the need for frequent basking. This removes a vulnerability seen in many modern reptiles, where exposure to open sunlight can increase risk from other predators. Here, heat is constant, and the snake can remain concealed for extended periods without physiological compromise. Reproductive strategies also reflect environmental stability. While direct fossil evidence of its breeding behavior is limited, comparisons with large modern boas and anacondas suggest that Titanoboa was likely ovoviviparous, giving birth to live young rather than laying eggs. This would reduce dependency on exposed nesting sites and increase offspring survival in a habitat where ground conditions are unstable and frequently submerged. Juveniles, though smaller, would already be independent predators, relying on instinct rather than parental care. For early human groups, survival in such an environment demands a different set of responses. Homo sapiens relies on pattern recognition, reading tracks, interpreting disturbances, anticipating movement. In open terrain, these skills create distance between threat and encounter. In wetlands, these signals degrade. Water erases footprints. Vegetation masks movement. The absence of evidence becomes ambiguous, offering no reliable indication of safety. Anthropological studies of human foraging behavior in dense tropical environments show increased reliance on group cohesion and auditory awareness. Individuals remain within close proximity, maintaining visual or vocal contact to reduce the risk of isolation. Tools become extensions of perception as much as defense. A spear probes uncertain ground. A stick disturbs water before a step is taken. These actions do not eliminate danger, but shift the probability of detection slightly in the human's favor. Yet there remains a fundamental limitation. Human sensory perception is not adapted to detect motion beneath opaque water. Unlike animals that rely on vibration sensitivity or specialized receptors, humans depend heavily on vision. In an environment where sight is obstructed, their primary sense is compromised. This imbalance defines the interaction. Titanoboa requires only proximity. Homo sapiens requires awareness before that proximity is reached. The difference between the two is measured not in strength but in time. the fraction of a moment between presence and realization. Survival in this environment is defined less by dominance and more by alignment with the conditions of the landscape. For Titanoboa, survival biology is rooted in efficiency. Its immense size is not a burden here, but an advantage, allowing it to subdue large prey while minimizing the frequency of hunts. A successful kill can sustain it for extended periods, reducing exposure and conserving energy. Its metabolism, regulated by the ambient heat, operates within a narrow but stable range. There is no need for constant activity. Stillness is not an activity. It is strategy. In contrast, Homo sapiens must remain in near constant motion. Caloric demands are continuous, requiring regular foraging and exploration. This necessity forces repeated exposure to risk. Where the snake can wait, humans must move. Where the snake relies on singular decisive moments, humans depend on accumulation of resources, of information, of small advantages that, over time, sustain life. The hunting strategy of Titanoboa is built on proximity and precision. It positions itself along natural corridors, narrow waterways, crossing points, edges where land meets water. These are areas where prey movement becomes predictable. Unlike predators that adjust their tactics dynamically during pursuit, the snake commits fully only when the conditions are exact. The strike is rapid but not reckless, aimed at securing immediate contact. Once contact is made, the body follows in coordinated loops, each coil tightening in response to the prey's exhalation. Studies of modern constrictors show that this method reduces escape probability while minimizing injury to the predator. For early humans, such an encounter offers little opportunity for reaction. The effectiveness of their tools depends on distance. Within the snake's reach, that distance collapses. Human intelligence, however, introduces a variable not present in most prey species. Homo sapiens does not rely solely on instinct. It observes, remembers, and adjusts behavior across time. Repeated exposure to dangerous environments leads to pattern formation, recognition of subtle cues, avoidance of specific areas, modification of movement strategies. While an individual may not survive an encounter, the group as a whole can adapt. This cumulative learning becomes a form of defense, reducing the likelihood of future contact. It is not immediate protection, but long-term resilience. Social structure further distinguishes human response. Unlike solitary prey, early human groups maintain coordinated awareness. Individuals communicate through gesture and sound, sharing information about potential threats. This collective vigilance can extend the effective sensory range of the group, allowing detection of anomalies that a single individual might miss. However, this system depends on cohesion. In fragmented terrain, where visibility is limited and movement is constrained, maintaining such cohesion becomes difficult. Separation increases vulnerability. A single individual, isolated even briefly, becomes subject to the same risks faced by any other organism within the swamp. In this balance of strategies, neither organism is universally dominant. The outcome depends on context, on terrain, timing, and the narrow window between detection and contact. Beyond the mechanics of hunting and survival, the interaction between these two organisms reveals the limits of instinct and the boundaries of adaptation. For Titanoboa, behavior is governed by deeply embedded neurological patterns refined over evolutionary time. It does not assess risk in abstract terms. It responds to stimulus, movement, heat, proximity. Its decisions are immediate and binary: strike or remain still. This simplicity is not a weakness. In a stable environment where variables change slowly, such direct responses reduce hesitation and maximize efficiency. There is no uncertainty in its action, only timing. For Homo sapiens, instinct is only one layer. Above it exists cognition, the ability to interpret incomplete information and act on probability rather than certainty. This introduces flexibility, but also hesitation. In an environment where threats are often invisible, the human mind must choose between caution and necessity, move forward and risk unseen danger, or remain and face depletion of resources. This tension shapes behavior in ways that are not always optimal in the immediate sense, but serve survival over longer periods. Parental investment further distinguishes the two. Titanoboa, like most large constrictors, provides no extended care after birth. Offspring are independent from the moment they enter the environment, subject to the same pressures as any other organism. Mortality is high, but those that survive are immediately functional within the ecosystem. This strategy relies on quantity and environmental stability rather than protection. In contrast, Homo sapiens invests heavily in fewer offspring. Juveniles require prolonged care, learning essential survival behaviors through observation and guidance. This dependency creates vulnerability, particularly in hazardous environments where mobility is reduced. A group traveling with young must adjust pace, maintain tighter formation, and allocate additional attention to protection. These adjustments can increase exposure time in dangerous zones, amplifying risk during each movement. The presence of rival species adds another layer to this dynamic. While Titanoboa occupies an apex position, it is not entirely without competition. Large crocodilian relatives share portions of the same habitat, competing for similar prey. Encounters between such predators are rare but consequential, often resolved through avoidance rather than direct conflict. Energy conservation remains a priority. Unnecessary confrontation carries risk even for dominant species. For humans, rivals are less about direct competition with apex predators and more about environmental constraints. Limited safe pathways, scarce dry ground, and unpredictable water levels create bottlenecks, where movement is forced into confined spaces. These are the same spaces where ambush predators thrive. The landscape itself becomes an intermediary, channeling both predator and prey into proximity. There is no moral dimension in these interactions, no intent beyond survival. Each organism operates within the limits of its biology, responding to conditions as they arise. Success is temporary. Failure is final. And within the wetlands, where visibility is measured in inches and time in fractions of a second, the difference between the two is reduced to a single moment, the instant when one becomes aware of the other. The group moves deeper into the wetland as the light begins to fade. What little clarity the afternoon offered is now dissolving into a dim, uniform haze. Shadows do not lengthen here. They merge. The boundary between water and land becomes harder to distinguish with each step. Their formation tightens. Movement slows. One individual extends a length of wood into the shallow channel ahead, disturbing the surface before placing a foot forward. The water responds with small, widening ripples that fade quickly into stillness. No immediate reaction, no visible threat. But the absence of disturbance is not confirmation of safety. Beneath the surface, partially buried in silton vegetation, Titanoboa remains motionless. Its body is aligned with the channel, occupying the narrow passage where movement is most likely to occur. Only a small portion of its dorsal surface lies near the interface of water and air, indistinguishable from submerged debris. It has been here for an extended period, minutes, perhaps longer. Its metabolism slowed, conserving energy. The approach of the group registers not as sound in the human sense, but as vibration. Subtle pressure waves travel through the water, detected along the length of its body. These signals are sufficient. They indicate size, movement, proximity. The snake does not interpret them. It responds. One member of the group steps forward, weight shifting onto uncertain ground. The water reaches just above the ankle. The probing stick lifts momentarily, repositioning. In that brief interval, distance closes. The strike is immediate. There is no visible preparation. The forward portion of Titanoboa accelerates through the water with minimal surface disruption, jaws opening at the final instant. Contact is made low, near the leg, not a killing bite, but an anchor, an initial point of control. The reaction within the group is instantaneous, but uncoordinated. Water erupts in all directions as balance is lost. The individual attempts to pull free, but the force is already increasing. The snake's body follows the initial strike in a continuous motion, loops forming with mechanical precision. Within seconds, the first coil is secured. Constriction begins not as crushing force, but as controlled tightening synchronized with the victim's attempts to breathe. Each exhalation is met with incremental pressure. The chest cannot expand fully. Circulation begins to falter. Other members of the group close distance, but the environment constrains their movement. Mud shifts beneath their feet. Water obscures the exact position of the coils. A spear is thrust downward, but the angle is uncertain. The weapon meets resistance, muscle, dense and unyielding, but the depth is insufficient to disrupt the process. The snake does not release. It does not adjust in response to pain in the way a mammalian predator might. Its behavior is fixed on completion. Time compresses. The struggle diminishes not because of reduced effort, but because the body can no longer sustain it. Movements become smaller, less coordinated. The water, once violently disturbed, begins to settle again, carrying only residual motion. Around them, the wetland remains unchanged. Insects continue their low, constant hum. Vegetation stands unmoved. The event does not alter the environment. It is absorbed by it, and within the tightening coils, the outcome is already determined long before it becomes visible. The resistance fades in increments, not all at once. What remains is reflex, irregular movement without coordination, the final activity of a system losing function. Within the coils of Titanoboa, pressure continues with the same measured consistency. There is no escalation, no visible urgency. The process is already complete in biological terms. Circulatory collapse has occurred. The surrounding individuals hesitate at the boundary of reach. Instinct draws them back even as proximity demands action. The water conceals the exact position of the snake's head, its coils, the vulnerable points where force might be applied effectively. Their tools designed for thrust at distance lose precision in this medium. Each movement risks further entanglement, the possibility of a second strike. One attempt to circle, stepping along the edge where the ground appears more stable. The mud shifts under weight, producing low vibrations that travel outward. The snake registers these changes but does not alter its primary behavior. Its sensory focus remains fixed on the body within its coils. Until movement fully ceases, the hold is maintained. A second spear enters the water at a sharper angle, driven with greater force. This time, the tip penetrates deeper, encountering resistance that yields slightly before stopping. The reaction is minimal, an almost imperceptible tightening of the surrounding loops. In large constrictors, localized injury does not immediately disrupt motor patterns. The nervous system continues to execute the constriction sequence until completion. Moments pass. The surface disturbance lessens. What was once violent becomes controlled, then nearly still. The water begins to clarify in fragments, revealing portions of the snake's body. Thick, cylindrical, patterned in muted tones that break its outline against the submerged vegetation. The scale of it becomes more apparent, extending beyond the immediate point of contact, disappearing into the darker channel behind. The group withdraws incrementally, not in a single decision, but through a series of small, cautious steps. The risk is no longer theoretical. It has become immediate, observed, irreversible. Survival shifts from intervention to avoidance. Within the coils, movement stops. Only then does Titanoboa begin to adjust its grip. The pressure eases slightly, not a release but a transition. The head repositions, locating the orientation of the prey. This phase is methodical, guided by tactile feedback rather than sight. Consumption will follow, a process that may take hours, after which the snake will retreat to a concealed area to digest over an extended period. The wetland absorbs the event completely. There is no lingering disturbance beyond the immediate vicinity. Sound returns to its prior rhythm. Insects resume their uninterrupted patterns. The surface closes over, concealing what remains below. For the group, the landscape has changed, not in structure, but in understanding. The unseen is no longer abstract. It has taken form, defined by consequence. The group does not move immediately. For a brief interval, they remain at the edge of the channel, their bodies angled away from the water, attention fixed on a place where movement has ceased. The surface has already begun to settle, broken only by faint, irregular disturbances beneath, subtle shifts as Titanoboa repositions its hold. There is no visible struggle now, only the quiet continuation of a process that does not require observation to proceed. Gradually, distance is reestablished. Steps are placed with increased care, each contact with the ground deliberate, testing stability before committing weight. The formation tightens further than before, individuals maintaining close proximity, minimizing the gaps that the environment can exploit. Vocalization remains low, minimal. Sound carries unpredictably here, and silence offers its own form of control. From a behavioral perspective, this response reflects a shift from exploratory movement to heightened risk avoidance. Studies of human foraging groups in predator-dense environments show that direct encounters rapidly alter movement patterns, often reducing speed while increasing group cohesion. The immediate cost is efficiency: less ground covered, fewer resources gathered. The benefit is reduced exposure to further predation. Physiologically, the effects persist beyond the moment of encounter. Elevated stress responses, accelerated heart rate, heightened sensory alertness, remain active for extended periods. While these responses can improve short-term awareness, they also increase energy expenditure. In an environment where caloric intake is uncertain, prolonged stress carries its own risks. Within the water, Titanoboa transitions fully from predation to consumption. Its jaws, connected by highly flexible ligaments, begin the process of engulfment. This is not rapid. The prey is oriented headfirst, reducing resistance from limbs and allowing smoother passage into the digestive tract. Muscular contractions along the body assist in drawing the mass inward, a coordinated sequence that progresses gradually. Once ingestion is complete, the metabolic state of the snake shifts. Digestion in large constrictors is an energy-intensive process, requiring significant physiological adjustment. Heart rate increases. Digestive enzymes are produced in large quantities. Internal temperatures may rise slightly as metabolic activity intensifies. During this period, mobility decreases. The snake becomes less inclined to move or engage, seeking a concealed location where it can remain undisturbed for days or even weeks. Ecologically, this single event redistributes energy within the system. The loss of one individual from a human group alters its internal structure, reducing labor capacity, increasing vulnerability, and changing future decision-making patterns. For the snake, the intake represents a substantial gain, supporting extended survival without further hunting. The wetland itself remains unchanged in form, but the interactions within it continue to shift. Predation events like this are not anomalies. They're integral to the balance of the ecosystem. Each occurrence influences behavior, movement, and survival strategies across species. And as the group moves away, more slowly now, more tightly bound, the environment closes behind them, unchanged and entirely indifferent. Distance grows, but the effects do not recede with it. The group's movement becomes more conservative, their path bending towards slightly elevated ground where the water thins and footing improves. These areas are limited, narrow ridges of sediment and root-bound soil that rise just enough to reduce immersion. They offer marginal safety, not from all threats, but from those that depend on concealment beneath water. The absence within the group begins to define their behavior. Spatial awareness adjusts. Where there was once a position, there is now a gap that is deliberately closed. In small human groups, each individual represents a significant portion of collective function: gathering, vigilance, protection. The loss is not abstract. It alters efficiency, slows decision-making, and redistributes roles among those who remain. Anthropological observations of early human societies indicate that such losses often lead to increased caution in subsequent movements, sometimes even temporary withdrawal from high-risk zones. Memory becomes a factor. Homo sapiens encodes experience not only at the individual level, but within the group dynamic. The location, the conditions, the subtle cues preceding the encounter, these are retained, influencing future choices. Areas resembling this environment may be avoided. Movement near opaque water may become more deliberate, more heavily probed. Over time, such adaptations reduce the probability of repeated encounters, though they can never eliminate it entirely. Behind them, concealed once more within the dark channels, Titanoboa enters a period of relative inactivity. The physical expansion of its body is now visible beneath the surface, a distended form that limits speed and flexibility. During digestion, vulnerability increases. Large constrictors, though formidable, are not immune to risk. In this state, avoidance becomes its primary strategy. It seeks deeper, more concealed water or dense vegetation where detection is minimized. The metabolic process is prolonged. Enzymatic breakdown of such a large mass requires sustained internal activity. Proteins are reduced, fats metabolized, skeletal structures gradually dissolved. This conversion of a single prey item into usable energy supports not only immediate survival, but future reproductive potential. Growth, tissue repair, and eventual reproduction are all tied to the success of such infrequent but significant feeding events. Within the broader ecosystem, the effects disperse subtly. The removal of one organism alters local interactions. Predation pressure shifts, resource competition adjusts. These changes are small in isolation, but continuous across time, forming the dynamic equilibrium that defines the wetland. No single event dominates, yet each contributes to the ongoing balance. For the human group, the wetland is no longer an unknown. It has been defined through direct consequence. Their behavior will carry this imprint forward, shaping how they move, where they pause, and what they avoid. The environment does not adapt to them. They adapt to it, or they do not remain. The wetlands remain unchanged, indifferent to the lives that pass through them. Water flows, vegetation shifts, insects hum, and the heat persists as it always has. Within this space, Titanoboa exists as it always has, a product of evolutionary precision, a creature shaped entirely by the demands of its environment. Its existence is neither cruel nor benevolent. It strikes because biology dictates, because survival requires. There is no intention beyond the function of body and instinct. The human group, in contrast, carries memory, adaptation, and the capacity for foresight. Each step taken after the encounter is informed by experience. They move more cautiously, more deliberately, yet they remain vulnerable. Their survival depends not on strength alone, but on perception, cooperation, and continual learning. Even intelligence cannot fully eliminate danger in a world designed for creatures attuned to the unseen, to the subtle, and to the patient. This story, though singular, reflects the greater narrative of life in such a landscape. Existence is measured not in morality, but in alignment with circumstance. Success is temporary. Loss is permanent. Every organism, from the smallest insect to the largest predator, is bound by the same rules: respond, survive, reproduce, or be erased. In the stillness after struggle, there's a quiet clarity. Nature does not judge. It balances, endures, and continues. The wetlands swallow events without preference, without notice, preserving only the rhythm of survival. And in this rhythm, life persists, defined by the unyielding logic of adaptation, by the fleeting moments that separate awareness from consequence, and by the delicate balance of existence itself. The coils of the giant snake recede beneath the water. The group moves forward. Time continues, indifferent, eternal, unbroken.